everyone. We're really pleased to be with you today. My name is Laura. My pronouns are she, her, Ella. I'm a partner with the law firm of Seyfarth Shaw. I specialize in employment law, but for purposes of today, I'm hoping that I'm looked at more as an advocate and an enabler to my clients in making the workplace inclusive.
Hi, my name is Karen Ulrich Stacy. I'm the CEO of Diversity Lab. We do R&D for DEI. But for the next 10 minutes, consider Laura and I your friendly and practical legal team. Yes, lawyers can be friendly. I did hear that in the audience.
And kind of practical, mostly.
She's the most practical lawyer I know in the whole world. So we are gonna cover the legalities of DEI, especially in the current climate. But we're also gonna ask you to take this moment and step back and reflect, and to take 3 actions that will allow you to stay calm and carry on legally with DEI. So first, the legalities. Laura?
Okay, so we could spend an entire day talking about the ins and outs and the background of the legal case that came forward in the Supreme Court in June of this year that was decided. I'm not going to do that as a lawyer. I'm going to spare you of that. But we wanted to share with you 3 main points from a lawyer's perspective on how we should be thinking about this decision as we keep calm and carry on in our DEIB work within our companies. So the first takeaway, really there's 3 on the legal aspects as well, is that the decision did not have an immediate impact on the legal standards of private employment in the US. Now, what does that mean? A lot of us are talking about, well, it was in the educational context and, but the problem is we see this decision being cited and attempted to be used already within the employment context. And so when one is not a lawyer, it can be confusing in terms of trying to figure out, well, why would it be different? Well, the statutes involved in that case were Title VI, and then it was, the U.S. Constitution. And in the legal standards in the case, it actually does not apply to private employment. What does apply to private employment, of course, is the EEO laws in the United States, which are neutral and have always banned or prohibited discrimination against certain groups. The second point we want to emphasize, which I think a panelist talked about earlier, is the concept of affirmative action is actually different in the employment context as compared to the educational context. What's confusing in the general parlance of the use of that word is that people throw the word affirmative action out there. And again, if you're not a lawyer, it can be conflated and confused. The principles are very different. What before the Supreme Court case in the educational context, affirmative action did allow organizations to take race into account as one factor in decision making, at least for educational decisions for who gets into a school. That has really never been the case, save for very limited exceptions in the employment context. And for the most part, employment has already banned use of protected status categories in decision making. The third piece that you need to take away from a legal context is that DEIB work that you and a lot of my clients are doing every day and that I'm doing every day within my own law firm, along with Karen in the legal industry, is actually work that can help us minimize risk as organizations, as employers. After all, a lot of times our DEIB work is rooted in equal employment opportunity, and it is rooted in creating opportunity for all people who work within an organization, right? So when you think about traditionally underrepresented people and traditional discrimination claims that might come from employment, DEIB work can actually help in reducing those kinds of claims.
All right, so the question everyone's asking is, what's legal? So
yes.
I'll start with internships and scholarships. Legal?
Okay, yes, provided they are inclusive and they're rooted in EEO principles.
Goals related to diversity. Legal?
Again, they can be. The devil's in the details with all of these programs. As long as they're rooted in your own data and also your availability data, and foundationally, people are, essentially selected based on their merits and their qualifications, perfectly fine.
Employee resource groups and or affinity groups.
As long as they're inclusive and open to all, absolutely.
Okay, last one. What about sponsorship programs that are offered to underrepresented humans?
If they are also offered to other folks as well.
All right, so those are some of the legalities, but connected to the legalities are some very practical things that we can all be doing right now that not only help on the legal side, but also are important just as we step back and take this crisis as an opportunity. So the first one is, like I said, to step back. Inventory all of the work that you're doing from a DEIA standpoint. Look at the language you're using, look at the implementation of the processes, and ask yourselves, are you focused on creating fair and equitable talent systems, not quotas, set-asides, or zero-sum situations? If you're focused on the E and the I of DEI, you're likely moving in the right direction with both language and your processes. So in the legal profession, for instance, Diversity Lab, my company, runs something called the Mansfield Rule. There are about 300 law firms and legal departments that are adhering to the Mansfield Rule, which ask organizations to consider at least 30% underrepresented lawyers for any open leadership role. The Mansfield Rule is open to everyone, but the ask, as I had mentioned earlier, feels like it has a percentage or a number attached to it. But it's still focused on inclusivity, not exclusivity. And the goal is to open the door wider, not make it exclusive. Laura, what's the second?
So the second is not just from a legal, but also a practical standpoint, make sure you're balancing the feel-good DEIB work along with the real-good DEIB work. Many of you know from the work you're doing every day in your organizations that measurement, rooting in data, and the ability to show your work for DEIB work is really where you get a lot of the actual results. It's great to do Heritage Month celebrations and recognize, communities and people within your organization to create that culture of belonging with the feel-good work, but it should also, for results purposes and measurement purposes, be rooted in data. We recommend, because we're lawyers, that you work with your lawyers around that in the way that it's implemented to make sure it's done in the right way, and you're using the right kinds of data to be able to do that kind of work. But as Karen talked about, there are a lot of great examples for how you see the results, but also that kind of data work can be actually a help and a support in defending any kind of employment litigation or other issue that may come up. So for example, in the Mansfield work that Karen does with many law firms, a lot of the early adopter firms actually diversified their leadership by twofold, I think, in a very short period of time through the measurement that came from the Mansfield framework. A lot of those firms may have been doing some of that work already, but without the measurement, it could have been just feel good as compared to real good.
And so the third and final is please be loud and proud about your DEI efforts. So I don't know if you saw Stacey Abrams' quote recently at the Fortune Impact Summit. She said, "Lawsuits are not designed for victory. They're designed for a chilling effect." And so silence is often seen as consent. So many organizations are standing still and hoping that no one will see them. But her message for everyone is, they know you're there. They found you. The best thing you can do together right now is to band together and to be loud and proud about your DEI efforts. So we've heard everybody today, there's been a theme of community and movement and collaboration. So that's the last and final piece of this puzzle that we'll say to you today. Inventory your language, inventory your processes to make sure they're focused on the E and the I. Do what Laura said and balance the do good, feel good aspects of it. But last, be loud and proud and band together. Don't violate any antitrust laws, please.
Or EEO laws.
Or EEO laws, but band together and be loud and proud. Because if we all focus on fairness, inclusivity, and equity, diversity will follow. Thank you.
Thank you.